All right, let's dive into the world of Miguel Hernández, specifically his famous work, The Unending Lightning.
Ooh, intense stuff.
It is a collection of poems that,
Yeah.
really packs a punch.
Yeah,
Our listeners want the key takeaways without, reading the whole thing
of
themselves.
course.
So we're working with a great analysis to help us out here. Get ready for some heavy emotions, passionate love, loss, even some existential angst.
I'm ready.
But trust me, fascinating stuff. I'm really excited to have an expert here with us to just kind of give us some context.
Happy to be here. I think what's really interesting about The Unending Lightning is it goes beyond just a collection of poems.
Right.
It's really a window into this remarkable poet's life and soul.
Yeah, I'm definitely intrigued. I mean, to understand the poetry, we need to understand the man, right?
Absolutely.
So who is Miguel Hernandez? What's his story?
Well, he was born in Spain in 1910, right? Like right in the middle of immense poverty and political unrest. And get this, he was largely self-taught, which makes his poetic talent all the more incredible.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, his life was tragically cut short. He died in prison in 1942,
Oh, wow.
only 31.
That's so young.
But even in that short time, he left behind this powerful legacy of just incredibly emotional poetry.
Dying in prison so young.
Yeah.
That's a heavy weight to carry. I can only imagine how all of those life experiences seep into his work.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
I mean, the poverty, the turmoil, even his death. I mean, it's all got to be reflected in the intensity of the unending lightning, wouldn't you say?
Definitely.
What are the big themes we should be looking out for?
So at its core, The Unending Lightning is about love.
Okay.
But it's not the lighthearted, joyful kind of love.
Right.
This is love as a force of nature, passionate, overwhelming, and at times destructive.
Okay.
Almost like a bolt of lightning that you can't escape.
That is some serious stuff. I mean, it almost sounds like you're saying love can be as much a source of pain as it is joy.
You got it.
Is that a fair reading?
Yeah, absolutely. The analysis actually highlights this quote from one of the poems where he writes, "Love, like a bull, gores my senses."
Whoa.
I know, right? So he's using these really, really visceral images to kind of get at that feeling of being completely consumed by love, almost to the point of pain.
Love like a bull gores my senses. Talk about intense imagery. I mean, it really makes you think about how love can feel so out of control, almost violent at times. And, and the bull. That's a pretty loaded symbol, right?
Yeah.
What's the significance of that?
Well, the bull is fascinating in Hernandez's work. Think about it. It's this powerful creature full of raw passion, full of instinct, but often destined for, well, a tragic end. Some scholars actually suggest that it mirrors Hernandez's own sense of being trapped by fate.
Oh, wow. That's a really interesting connection. It sounds like these symbols aren't just, random images. They're carefully chosen to convey a much deeper meaning.
Exactly.
And maybe even connect to his own personal struggle.
You got it. And that's what makes this analysis so valuable. It helps us decode those symbols and see how they add these layers of meaning to the poems.
Okay. So we've got love as this powerful destructive force and this image of the bull as this symbol of passion and maybe even fate.
Yeah.
What other symbols should we be on the lookout for?
Well, besides the bull, you'll see recurring images of lightning, fire, and water throughout the collection, each one kind of adding another layer to understanding the poems.
Okay. I'm really curious about how he uses those elements to explore like such complex emotions. Are we going to dive into specific poems that showcase this?
Absolutely. We'll take a closer look at some of those key poems in the next part, like Lightning That Does Not Stop and The Uninhabited Heart.
Perfect. Now I have to ask, why should someone who maybe isn't a poetry enthusiast care about a book written almost 100 years ago?
Good question.
I mean, what makes The Unending Lightning relevant today?
I think it really speaks to the enduring power of Hernandez's work. While the poems might be rooted in his specific experiences, the themes he explores are universal and timeless. Love, loss, that search for meaning in a world that often feels chaotic and painful. I mean, these are things that we all wrestle with, regardless of, when or where we live.
It's like he's giving a voice to those deep, sometimes difficult emotions that we all feel but don't always know how to express.
Exactly. You're right. There is something about poetry, right, that can make those feelings more tangible and relatable.
Right.
But there's actually another layer here to consider, especially with The Unending Lightning.
Ooh, Tell me more.
Yeah.
What other layer are we missing?
Well, remember, The Unending Lightning was published in 1936,
Right.
right at the start of the Spanish Civil War,
Yeah.
a period of incredible upheaval and suffering.
Oh, wow. So Hernandez was writing during a time of intense political and social turmoil.
He was. And while the poems in The Unending Lightning primarily focus on personal emotions, a lot of scholars believe his personal pain foreshadows this larger suffering that was about to engulf Spain.
So it's almost like his individual struggles are a microcosm of the larger struggles of his nation.
Exactly. And that adds another layer of meaning to the work.
Yeah.
It's both deeply personal and reflective of the broader historical context.
Wow. I'm already seeing how much depth there is to this book. It's amazing how a single collection of poems can encompass so much history and emotion and, artistry.
It really is remarkable. And there's even more to unpack, when we look at the impact Hernandez had on Spanish poetry itself.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Okay.
What makes his style so unique and influential?
Well, he was a master of blending traditional forms like the sonnet
Okay.
with this incredible modern intensity. He wasn't afraid to experiment, to push the boundaries of what poetry could be, and that had a huge impact on the poets who came after him.
So he was kind of a rebel,
Yeah.
shaking up the poetry world.
You could say that. He was definitely a trailblazer.
Okay, so we've established that Miguel Hernández was this incredibly talented and innovative poet, and his work, still resonates today.
Yeah.
But before we jump into specific poems, I'd love to get a little more grounded in the overall themes of The Unending Lightning.
Yeah.
What are the big takeaways from this analysis so far?
Well, we've gotten a glimpse into who Miguel Hernández was, the historical context of his work, and those key themes running through The Unending Lightning. Passionate love, the search for meaning in the face of suffering, and those incredibly potent symbols like the bull and lightning, which add layers of meaning.
Yeah, we've also started to see how his poetry reflects both his personal struggles, and the larger sociopolitical climate of his time. It's like he's weaving together the personal and the political, creating this incredibly rich tapestry of meaning.
Exactly. And honestly, we've only scratched the surface,
Right.
but I think we've laid a good foundation for understanding why The Unending Lightning is considered a masterpiece. Remember, it's not just about the facts and analysis. It's about feeling the intensity of his words, the raw emotion that kind of jumps off the page.
Right.
And to really appreciate that, we need to, dive into the poetry itself.
I'm ready to be moved. Let's do it. Welcome back to our deep dive into Miguel Hernández's The Unending Lightning. In part 1, we got to know the poet himself and the historical context surrounding his work.
We also explored some of those, major themes, like the intensity of his love poems and that constant search for meaning in the face of suffering.
But now it's time to actually experience the poetry.
Yes.
I'm ready to dive into these poems and see what all the fuss is about.
Great. One poem that really sets the stage for the entire collection is Lightning That Does Not Stop.
Okay.
Remember, the Spanish title of the book is El Rayo que no cesa, so this is like the title track.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It seems fitting that the poem sharing the title with the book would, capture the essence of the entire collection.
Right.
So what makes Lightning That Does Not Stop so powerful?
It's this outpouring of raw emotion, like a torrent of pain and longing that feels both incredibly personal and universal at the same time. Hernández uses the image of lightning to represent, this unrelenting pain that just keeps striking him over and over again.
We talked about the symbolism of lightning earlier, but hearing it in the context of this poem, it hits differently.
Yeah.
It's like I can feel the electricity in his words.
Exactly. That's the magic of poetry, right?
Yeah.
The way it can create these visceral reactions.
Right.
And in this poem, he goes even further by comparing this unending lightning to the pain of unrequited love.
Oh, so not just love, but unrequited love.
Yes.
That definitely adds another layer of intensity to the poem.
Absolutely.
I'm starting to see how this lightning metaphor really sets the tone for the entire collection.
It does. It establishes this feeling of being overwhelmed by forces you can't control, whether it's love, pain, or even fate.
Speaking of fate, you mentioned earlier how some scholars see Hernández's life as mirroring this idea of being trapped by destiny.
Yes.
Does that come through in the poetry as well?
It definitely does, especially in poems like The Wounded Bull.
Ooh, that's the one where the bull represents the poet himself, right?
Yes. In this poem, the bull becomes a symbol of Hernández's own struggles.
Yeah.
He compares the bull's suffering in the bull ring to his own internal turmoil, as if he too is destined for this tragic end.
That's a powerful connection.
Mm.
It makes me wonder if Hernandez felt like he was fighting against something he couldn't ultimately overcome.
Mm.
Do you think that sense of inevitability is uh, is a common thread throughout his work?
It's definitely present, and it connects back to what we were talking about earlier, that idea of existential angst.
Right, right. I
Yeah.
remember you mentioning that term before.
Yeah,
Could you remind me what existential angst actually means? I feel like it gets thrown around a lot, but I'm not always sure I fully understand it.
of course. At its core, existentialism is a philosophy that emphasizes individual freedom and responsibility in a world that can often feel meaningless. So existential angst is, that feeling of anxiety or dread that comes from grappling with those big questions about existence, purpose, our place in the universe.
So it's like that feeling of being thrown into the world without a clear set of instructions and having to figure it all out on your own.
Exactly. And I think Hernandez's poetry really captures that feeling.
Yeah.
You see it in his constant questioning, his wrestling with themes of fate and destiny, and that feeling of being trapped by forces beyond his control.
That's a really insightful way to look at it.
Yeah.
It makes me think about how his poetry, even though it's written almost a century ago, still feels so relevant today.
Hmm.
I mean, who hasn't felt that kind of existential angst at some point in their lives?
Absolutely. It's a timeless theme, and Hernandez's exploration of it is what makes his work so enduring.
So we've got lightning, bulls, existential angst, all pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah, it is.
Are there any moments of lightness or hope in the unending lightning?
There are. It's not all doom and gloom. One poem that offers a glimmer of hope is Lullaby of the Onion.
A lullaby about an onion. That's an interesting choice.
Right. But it's actually a beautiful and surprisingly tender poem.
Okay.
He uses the onion, this simple, everyday object, to represent the purity and sustenance of love.
Mm.
It's a lullaby dedicated to his unborn child, expressing his hopes and dreams for the future.
Wow. So even amidst all the darkness and pain, there's this glimmer of hope and love for his child.
Exactly. It's a
Yeah.
reminder that even in the face of suffering and uncertainty, there's still beauty to be found, and, life goes on.
That's such a powerful message, and I love how he uses such a simple, unexpected image like an onion to convey it.
Hmm.
So even though the unending lightning is known for its intense emotions, it sounds like there's a lot of nuance and complexity to these poems.
Definitely. And that's what makes it so rewarding to read.
Right.
There's always something new to discover, a new layer of meaning to uncover.
Well, this deep dive is certainly living up to its name. We've gone from broad strokes to these nuanced readings of specific poems.
Yeah.
In part 3, how do we connect all of this to his lasting impact? What is Hernandez's legacy?
Stay tuned, because we're about to explore how the unending lightning continues to spark conversations and inspire readers, even decades after its initial publication.
And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into the unending lightning.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation.
We've covered a lot of ground from, Miguel Hernandez's life to those powerful themes of, well, love, loss, and that search for meaning.
Right, and we even got into the nitty-gritty of some specific poems, like Lightning That Does Not Stop, and that surprising Lullaby of the Onion.
It has been quite a journey. But now I'm curious about the bigger picture. What's the lasting impact of the unending lightning? Why is this collection, written almost a century ago, still relevant to readers today?
Well, one reason is the timelessness of the themes, as we've discussed.
Mm.
Love, loss, that feeling of searching for meaning in a world that can feel meaningless. These are universal human experiences that resonate across generations and cultures.
Yeah, it's like he tapped into something fundamental about the human condition, right?
Yeah,
Those emotions we all grapple with no matter who we are or where we come from.
exactly. And that's why the unending lightning continues to speak to people across time and cultures. I mean, it's been translated into numerous languages.
Wow.
And it's still studied and celebrated by, scholars and poetry lovers worldwide.
His work has really stood the test of time. It's fascinating how a single collection of poems can have such a lasting impact.
It really is. And it's not just the themes that resonate. Hernandez's style, that unique blend of traditional forms and raw emotional intensity, continues to inspire poets and writers today.
Yeah, we talked earlier about how he was a bit of a rebel, right?
Yeah.
Shaking things up in the poetry world by pushing the boundaries of what poetry could be.
Yeah, he was definitely ahead of his time. His work helped pave the way for future generations of poets who embraced a more raw, visceral style. He wasn't afraid to put those intense emotions front and center.
So he's not just a great poet, he's a significant figure in the history of Spanish literature.
Absolutely. And his influence goes even beyond the literary world. Hernandez's life and work have also become like symbols of resistance and resilience. Remember, he was writing during the Spanish Civil War, a period of immense, political and social upheaval.
Right.
He was deeply committed to social justice, and his poetry reflects that.
Right. We talked about how his own struggles seem to mirror the struggles of his nation. It's like he was giving voice to the pain and uncertainty of an entire generation.
Exactly. And even though he died tragically young in prison, his spirit lives on through his words. The unending lightning stands as a testament to the power of art to transcend adversity,
Yeah.
to give voice to both pain and hope even in the darkest of times.
What a powerful legacy. It's clear that Miguel Hernandez was more than just a poet. He was like a voice for his generation, a symbol of resilience in the face of, you know, unimaginable hardship.
Precisely. And that's why, all these years later, the unending lightning still resonates with readers. It's a reminder that even in the face of suffering, the human spirit can endure. And art can offer a sense of solace, inspiration, and connection that transcends time and space.
I think we've done a pretty great job unpacking this complex and fascinating work. We've explored the life and times of Miguel Hernandez, the key themes of the unending lightning, and even delved into some specific poems to get a feel for his unique style.
Yeah, and we've touched on his lasting legacy and how his work continues to inspire readers and writers today.
But as we said before, this is just the beginning.
Right.
There are so many more layers to uncover and poems to explore, so we encourage you to seek out the unending lightning for yourself and experience the power of Hernandez's words firsthand.
Let his poetry spark your own thoughts, your own interpretations, your own connections. That's the beauty of great art. It invites us into a dialogue, a shared experience that goes beyond, time and place.
Beautifully put. And that's what the deep dive is all about, giving you the tools and insights to explore new ideas and discover new perspectives. So until next time, keep diving deep and keep those minds open.